Hello, readers and writers. My name is Miss Hodson, and I'm your virtual teacher. Welcome back. We are working on some 7th grade readings. We are doing a lot of thinking and talking. You've been writing quite a bit, and we're staying focused now, moving forward into week 7 on lesson 30, and our guiding questions always remain the same. Number 1, how is the adolescent brain changing? We have looked at this question through the lens of a lot of different kinds of articles. How does sleep affect the change in the adolescent brain? How does exercise affect change in the adolescent brain? What are the parts of the brain? We've done a lot of research reading. So we're going to move forward today and this week into looking at screen addiction and how a research study has tied that to some outcomes for adolescents and their brains. Our second guiding question is, how can I make an informed decision about an issue like screen time? And then effectively argue my position. Very specifically, this week we will be reading on this particular topic. We've been kind of doing some background reading and some research reading up to this point, and all learning about the adolescent brain. So let's get started. Go ahead and pause the video to accumulate these materials that you'll need for today's lesson. From your distance learning packet, you'll want to find the article for lesson 30. It's titled Screen Addiction, Study Links Too Much Device Time to Teen Unhappiness. Lesson 30 and the Lesson 30 note catcher. You will need a pencil, so go ahead and pause the video, get those materials, and meet me back here in just a minute. I'll see you soon. All right, fantastic. Hopefully you're able to find your paper printout, and we can get started today with our learning targets. There are 2. The first one says, I can cite several pieces of text-based evidence from an informational text. So that's going to be one where we're not telling some fictional story, we're not making things up, it's very research-based, there's a lot of statistics in it. That's the kind of text we're looking at today. It's an informational text. And this first learning target asks us to find several pieces of text-based evidence. So we'll be looking for that. Secondly, I can determine the meaning of unknown words in text. So we'll be looking more deeply at that learning target as we go. All right, so what I'd like you to do is find your copy of the article. Now, you could pause the video or fast forward. If you don't want to listen to me do the read aloud, that's totally fine. But I always, on day 1 of a week, do a read aloud, sometimes a little read aloud, think aloud, as I'm going through the article and things are occurring to me that I might want to elaborate on as your teacher. So you could, with a family member, a caregiver, maybe a friend who's in your environment, you could read the article or just keep play on your video, and I'm going to begin the read aloud. And that's going to take us about 10 minutes. It's always a 3-page article, and here we go. We're going to get started. This week's article is titled Screen Addiction, Study Links Too Much Device Time, Teen Unhappiness. So it's linking those 2 ideas, too much time on the screen to teen unhappiness. It's by the Washington Post, and it begins below the picture. Silicon Valley executives have complained about smartphones and social media that are designed to be addictive. But a new report puts numbers to their warnings. The report finds that the more hours a day teens spend in front of screens, the less satisfied they are. Here's the name of the report. Quote, decreases in psychological well-being among American adolescents after 2012 and links to screen time during the rise of the smartphone technology, end quote. It was published by the journal Emotion. The report used information from a national survey of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders done every year by the University of Michigan. The report said that young people's self-esteem, life satisfaction, and happiness have gone down since 2012. The year 2012 was the first year that more than half of Americans owned a smartphone. Well-being drops with more screen time, report says. The report also found that adolescents' psychological well-being decreased and the more hours a week they spent on screens. This includes the following: the internet, social media, texting, gaming, and video chats. The findings are like earlier reports linking frequent screen use and teenage depression and anxiety. In the past 6 years, more and more people have started using smartphones. In 2012, 37% of teens had one. Now that number is higher. In 2016, 89% of teens had one. Those statistics come from the Pew Research Center and the Associated Press, NORC, Center for Public Affairs and Research. The study graphed the connection between happiness and screen activities. It also graphed the connection between happiness and non-screen activities, such as sports, in-person interaction, and religious services. Jean Twenge is the study's lead author. Twenge is a psychology professor at San Diego State University. She called the relationship of screen and non-screen activities zero sum. That means if you're doing one, it takes away from the others. Playing games in fields used to make kids happier. Diane Tanman lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland. She worries that is the case of her sons. Her boys are 11 and 15. They used to play games in fields when they were little, and it made them happier, Tanman said. These days, her sons are more into online games. Many of the games have rewards built in to keep players coming back. I think it's addictive, Tanman said. It's just like junk food for the brain. Another parent named Ed Lazara says his 12-year-old son Leo, a fan of the game Minecraft, is more irritable after he has been playing a lot. Amanda Lenhart is deputy director for the Better Life Lab at New America. She has conducted studies on teenagers and screen use. Lenhart said, rather than making one set of rules about when and how much screen time teens should have, she prefers a case-by-case approach. Some of it is about your particular kid and your particular life and you as a parent, she said. Some of it is you looking at your child and saying, something's not right here. Devices can be distracting. In many ways, some sort of screen time is built into being a young person. Many schools require students to be online and to use iPads, Chromebooks, or other devices to do their work. But teachers have also complained that technology can become a distraction when students use their devices in the classroom for things other than their studies. Technology-free schools do exist, including some in Silicon Valley, where tech titans have sent their own children to. And movements such as Wait Until 8th have urged parents to delay giving smartphones to kids. But even Bill Gates, who is known for limiting his children's access to technology, allowed them to get phones at age 14. Maria Bashir is the mother of a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. She views screen time like dessert. Sure, you can have some once in a while, but it shouldn't be part of your everyday. Apple planning to give parents more ways to control phone use. Investors at Apple, the maker of the iPhone, wrote an open letter saying they want phones to give parents more ways to control how their children use phones. The investors want parents to be able to limit the number of hours their children use their phones. They also want parents to be able to shut off social media access at a certain time each day. Twenji helped put the letter together. The letter used research that showed negative psychological effects of phone use on teens and noted parents' constant battle over screen time, calling it unrealistic and a poor long-term business strategy to ask parents to fight this battle alone. Apple responded by saying it is planning new ways to increase parental control. You know, throughout this week, you can refer back to this particular lesson, number 30, so that you can hear me reading that article again. Hopefully you had your eyes on the print. Sometimes when you see a word and also hear a word at the same time, it makes more sense. Your brain is processing information in a more efficient way. And also, when I'm reading aloud, my brain is sometimes doing things and making mistakes. They're actually called miscues. They're things my brain does when I'm under the pressure of reading perfectly and reading aloud and under video recording. And so instead of just stopping and starting over and being perfect, I want you to be able to see that I make mistakes when I'm reading aloud. And if I hear it doesn't sound quite right, I go back and I look at, did I say that right? I need to say that again. And it helps me comprehend what I'm reading. So I hope that you have those experiences also. I'd like you to think about some of these questions as we just read. I just want you to reflect on this. Why do you think that too much screen time can lead to unhappiness? Now, that might not be your case. You might think this entire concept is just silliness, but I think it's important that we get serious about some research that's being done and our own personal behavior and how it's affecting our lives, or maybe people you know. So that first question is, why do you think that too much screen time can lead to unhappiness? How many hours of screen time do you have every day? So that's a big question. And remember, screen time includes when you're maybe on the internet or playing a video game. Honestly, it's really watching television also, or on social media and many other platforms. So just think about screen as in a video screen, a phone screen, or a television screen, okay? And I'd like you to now have a conversation with a family member or a caregiver. And remember that the elements of screen time does include everything that's on your list here. We just talked about that. Computers, phones, video games, social media, television. I would like you to think out loud and honestly with your conversation partner about how does screen time affect you? Can too much access to technology impact young people? Maybe keep it safe. Maybe you don't want to think about you as a 7th grader, but think about your younger brothers and sisters or cousins or friends. And think about, does it have an impact on them? And is that impact positive or negative? And what are some ideas for parents to limit time on screen? I'm sure you don't really want to talk about that, but how can we set reasonable limits and be aware and happy to know that I've hit my time and I'm going to have to go figure out something else productive and meaningful to do. I want you to pause the video, go have that conversation, and when we get back, we're going to reflect on these questions for just a moment. I'll see you in a few minutes. All right. Welcome back. Well, I hope you had a serious conversation with maybe someone in your family. Not everybody has all these screens, right? Like we don't all have cable with our television, and we don't have maybe a smartphone. Or even if we have a phone, it might not have all of these capabilities for gaming or social media. A lot of kids do those things, and a lot of young people don't. So I'm just wondering where you're at in all of that. I know for me, I'm retired once. I'm a lot older than most people. I know that I spend a lot of time with screen. I usually plan to watch a movie or something in the evening. I know I work a lot digitally in my work. I work for a nonprofit organization and I'm a virtual teacher. So I am on screen, like with you now, a lot in my day, and I have to be aware of how it makes me feel. Sometimes I have to schedule a little walk around to stretch and get some sunshine, or be aware that I'm getting a little fatigued or even anxious. And even at my age, my stage of life, I am very aware that I get agitated and I need a break. So we're really going to dig deeply into those ideas this week. And I just want you to be ready for that. I'd like you to find your lesson 30 note catcher, and using your pencil, just take some notes from the article on each of the topics in that top 4 box. How does screen addiction affect young people? They outlined some ideas about how it's affecting young people. How do schools use technology according to the article? And you could also add a little bit about how you use it at your own school. And very specifically, at the end of one of the paragraphs, they were talking about a zero sum. There's comparing to zero sum, and it's the idea about time commitment on screen or outside at the playground or at the park or what have you. And look that up. That's a really important concept. And then lastly, why does Apple want to give parents more control over their student or their children's phone? I'm sure that's a very agitating idea, but I think we need to look at what does Apple want? Why do they want to do that? And the rest of the blank lines are for you to just take any notes that you think might help you as we study this topic this week. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video for about 15 or 20 minutes. And when you're done filling out your note catcher, come on back and we'll pick up with the close to today's lesson. All right. Thank you. Thanks for your effort there. You know, going back to our learning targets, and I'm just going to switch our slides back there. You actually probably pulled out of your article several pieces of text-based evidence in order to fill out your note catcher here. So you're actually going to say on page 1 or on page 2, it clearly states, and you're quoting something, you're citing evidence, answering those 4 questions. And also, we were looking at our learning target around the concept of being able to notice and try and solve for some unknown words that were in our lesson, our reading. And so possibly in your notes, in your writing area, you might add a couple of words that were a little bit unfamiliar or a push for you this week, and maybe how you solved for that. I don't usually write down anybody's name. There were a lot of names, researchers and parents' names. I don't usually write down those things, but I do write down words like unrealistic or interaction, you know, just making sure I know what that word is. So as we close today, I'd like you to share this topic this week is really great to have conversations at home with your maybe brothers, sisters, mom, dad, caregiver of any kind, and just kind of like, what is this going to lead us to in our study this week? And after you completed all the work, I would love it if you would also pick up and do some extra reading for your own pleasure. I've started doing a reading with one of my own kids. This book's called The Four Agreements. I've read it many times in my life, but she just graduated from college and we're going to read it together and have little book club conversations. That might sound like crazy town to you, but it isn't. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you might be reading a book with a friend of yours or someone else in the family, and you can have those conversations. Be open to it. Might be fun. Your fluency practice today is the very last step, and then I'll catch up with you later on tomorrow. You're going to please get out a timer. Maybe it's a cell phone timer, some kind of kitchen timer on the microwave or something, and read the passage for 1 minute and see how far you get, and then mark it and add up the words. And as we work with this article this week, like every week, I believe that your fluency with the article will improve. You'll know the words, you'll know the ideas, and we'll get deeper in our practice. So at the end of the week, when you do this fluency check again, I bet your number will be higher. I really appreciate your efforts today. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Make it a great day.